So since the first report that ivermectin could reverse multi-drug resistance in 1996, and yet we still don't see this drug being used in cancer protocols. Today I'd like to have a discussion about some commonly known drugs that we are discovering alternative uses for. And in particular, I want to talk about ivermectin. So we all know that there's been some controversy over the use of ivermectin over the past few years. But we're going to talk about what it has been used for, when it was discovered, how it's used, and then some exciting new things that are being learned. So I'm going to talk about ivermectin, and I'm going to mention a couple of other drugs in relation to their use for cancer. Chemotherapy is one of the standard methods of treatment of malignant tumors, and it aims to cause lethal damage to cellular structures, mainly the DNA of cells, which is the powerhouse and the brains of the cells. Noteworthy in recent years, discoveries of novel anti-cancer agents from well-known antibiotics have opened up new treatment pathways for several cancer diseases. So this first study that I'm looking at is from 2019, published in PubMed, and they were looking at new applications for the antibiotics doxycycline. We're all pretty familiar with that one being used for tick-borne diseases like Lyme disease, seleninomycin, monensin, and ivermectin, as they are known to show anti-tumor activity, but they have not yet been introduced into standard chemotherapy for cancer. To date, these agents have been used for the treatment of a broad spectrum of bacterial and parasitic infectious diseases and are widely available. The data clearly show that these antibiotics should be recognized in the near future as novel agents able to eradicate cancer cells and cancer stem cells across several cancer types, and we're going to talk about those. So this is the second study from 2021, also was in Pharmacological Research Journal and published online through PubMed. So ivermectin has powerful anti-tumor effects, including the inhibition of proliferation, so that's the multiplying of cells, metastasis, which is the spread of cancer cells, and angiogenic activity, which is cancer cells bring in their own blood supply. They make their own blood vessels to bring in nutrients that they need to feed the cancer cells. So they have found anti-tumor effects in a variety of cancer cells, and we'll talk about those. And it may be related to the regulation of multiple signaling pathways, and they discuss a lot of them. I'm not going to go into the deep science of all that, but for the most part, it's through something called PAC1 kinase. Ivermectin promotes programmed cancer cell death, including apoptosis, which is where the cells burst, autophagy, which is where the immune system eats the cells, and pyroptosis, which is inflammation. They call them inflammasomes, come in and destroy the cells. Ivermectin can also inhibit tumor stem cells, so cancer stem cells, and interestingly can reverse multi-drug resistance. So a lot of times when we have people or animals who are undergoing chemotherapy, they will go into remission, and then the cancer will come back with a vengeance, and they'll be resistant to the chemotherapy drugs that are being used. And ivermectin, in a lot of instances, can reverse that drug resistance, which is really important to make these drugs still viable for use. And it exerts its optimal effect when used in combination with other chemotherapy drugs. So ivermectin by itself is not going to have these great effects that we're seeing in these studies, but when combined with other things, it can be very beneficial. And so you may remember that over the past, probably decade maybe, there have been a lot of studies using fenbendazole, which is another dewormer, antiparasitic from another class of drugs but that has been talked about and been used a lot in cancer protocols, particularly in animals, but also in people. And that is an old school sheep dewormer that's been around for a very, very long time. All right, so ivermectin is an anti-parasitic drug that is widely used for the treatment of many parasitic diseases, such as river blindness, elephantiasis, and scabies. A Japanese scientist, Satoshi Omura, and an Irish scientist, William Campbell, won the 2015 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for the discovery of the excellent efficacy of ivermectin against parasitic diseases, both in animals and people. Recently, ivermectin has been reported for the proliferation of several tumor cells by regulating multiple signaling pathways, and that suggests that ivermectin may be an anti-cancer drug with great potential. Yay! But we're going to kind of discover why it's not being more widely studied as we go through this. So in addition to ivermectin, the current ivermectin family members include selamectin, duramectin, and moxidectin. And I talk a lot about moxidectin toxicity and problems that we see with that drug, particularly neurologically. So I'm not a huge fan of it, and this particular study was looking at ivermectin because they say it is currently the most successful ivermectin family drug and was approved by the FDA for use in humans in 1978. That is how far back this drug goes. And that's part of the problem with it, because it's off patent and anybody can make it, sell it, distribute it, and it's very cheap, very cheap. So for pharmaceutical companies, a lot of times we have to follow the money, and we have to look at why would we want to do more research into a drug that people can get for a couple of bucks when there are newer drugs which may or may not be bigger and better, but cost thousands of dollars for a dose of chemo. So I think that's a lot of why we're not seeing more studies, because again, been approved for use in humans since 1978.